Hey everybody, welcome back to the Streaming CT YouTube channel. We are here in the Capture the Concept studio, our parent company that does video production, but we're going to talk about live streaming and broadcast on this channel. And today we have a special guest, Anton Shmakov. Did I say it right?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to get it right. Anton is the co-founder of Mr. Net, this box here, which we are a reseller of, and we're only a reseller of it because we believe in it, and we've tried lots of other cellular bonding and bonding devices over the years. So, Anton, how you doing?
Hello, Joe. Doing quite well.
As you sip your tea, your nice hot tea. Anton came up all the way from New York to Connecticut here in our studio, so thank you for making the trip.
That was a fine trip. I enjoyed quite a bit.
I guess maybe just introduce yourself, your background. How did you get from you were at Google for a while? How did you get from the tech software engineer world to selling this red box with lots of crazy antennas on it?
That's an excellent question, and I'm not sure I quite have an answer for it. Just happened. But yeah, so you mentioned Google. I've been at Google before. I've been doing this for about 5 years. Before Google, it was LinkedIn. Before LinkedIn, there was 4 other companies, mostly small ones. Like I've been like different startups, different verticals. And funny enough, the college I went to was specialized in communications and just basically telecom college. And when I was at college, whenever it was a software piece, obviously that's what I was going after. But when it was telecoms, I was like, I will never use this stuff in my career. No way. No way it's going to be relevant. But here we go. So yeah, that's kind of the first time we're doing, I'm kind of have something adjacent to telecoms and right on doing something advanced, trying to make people's lives better and more convenient as far as the telecoms goes, and kind of transitioned into this with my co-founder, Alex, who is a very good friend of mine, also from the same college. So he kind of like nudged me towards it over the years, and that's here we are.
So you're a software engineer by trade, though?
Software engineer by trade, always been kind of like product-oriented software engineer.
Gotcha.
So like always been very, very deeply ingrained into like how to make product work better for the customers, always like kind of front-facing solutions. And how do you all like very tight work with designers, with product managers, like again, always been product oriented with a deeper technical understanding, like how to build things. But that's right.
What's your favorite programming language?
Well, now you're going to start some holy wars right here.
That's the idea, right? The internet, the war. So people love it.
I'm going to scare like half of the customer base going to turn it off right here. But I'm actually a big fan of JavaScript.
Okay.
Because, and the reason
still important.
Very important. There you go, you see? That's exactly right. But I love it, and I kind of like fall into it from the get-go because of how much flexibility it gives to you. Like it's obviously unstructured and it's a bunch of mess. And for me, it was actually, we talked off the camera for a bit, and I talked to you about how I like my things to be difficult. And that was one of it. Like, yeah, obviously JavaScript is so much difficult to build complex applications on. But my drawing into the web programming in general was like build complex big things, and building on top of JavaScript, there is no structure, so we need to figure out how to build it right. But with the right practices, with the right policies, with the right code standards, you can actually deliver quite well. And what I've been drawn by JavaScript is that it's like very flexible. You can do like strict object-oriented programming. You can do functional programming using JavaScript, at least conceptually similar. So that's what I was intrigued by, and then I just realized you can do everything with it. So why do anything else?
Sure.
But so that's
your story on JavaScript.
That's my story
on JavaScript.
Python. Not
you
Python,
heard it here.
Yeah.
So like these days, being kind of one of the leadership folks at Mr. Net, how often do you get to actually play with code, or do you have employees who are doing that?
I roughly spent, in 2 years, about an hour coding.
1 hour?
1 hour total. And out of that 1 hour, you can actually go, there's like, as a Easter egg on the website, if you go amrnet.us/cat.
Okay.
So I spent an hour on this page. Not the most astounding page, but it gets a point across. Yeah, like I'm obviously involved a lot in the engineering direction. Like what do you want to prioritize? What feature set? What technology stack needs to be used? How do you make sure that it actually future compatible? Like I always believe that I have quite a bit of strength on figuring out the trends where whatever it may happen, like where the industry is trending, where the software world is trending.
Sure.
So I have a lot of voice in that regard, but as far as like hands-on programming, it's just I have no time, turns out. So
Gotcha.
first time in my career, I actually don't do any code-related stuff.
It's hard to be the boss.
It is tough.
You start making /cat URLs.
Exactly. I remember when it happened. I was so overrun with all the crap I had to deal at the moment, and it was like close to middle of the night, not ready to go to bed, and like I just need something to use my mind about. Like let me just, so I pieced it together. It's actually not. It's just pure CSS. It's not even JavaScript. It's just pure CSS coding, and I just went for it, and I just made this animation. Awesome. So it's kind of was my like release valve.
It lets you relax and go to sleep.
Exactly.
That's awesome. For those who haven't heard of what this thing is, and you're wondering, okay, who is this guy and why is this here? Maybe just describe what the box does, and like generally who it's for.
Well, overall, what Box does is it gives you highly reliable internet connectivity wherever you need it, and it does it by aggregating all available internet sources into one robust and breakable channel. And specifically, you can see antennas sticking out of it. And those antennas is 2 per 1 cellular channel. So it built in has 3 cellular channels, which the box always comes with pre-activated data plans. So you don't need to figure out your deals with Verizon's and AT&T and T-Mobile's of the world. We've done it for you. And you can also aggregate, you can put your local internet in, there is a port in front, you can aggregate the Wi-Fi in if you have some, and we just aggregate all those channels together, and we give you the best possible performance out of all of them, which again, it's not just about the bandwidth, which is important, but it's not the highest problem actually in the industry. The highest problem is to have it stable and reliable, and that's our primary focus on. So you're gonna get your stable connectivity, whatever you use it for, which again, there is a lot of different applications and a lot of different verticals, but since your channel is mostly tailored around broadcast, so obviously for broadcast, how it's relevant, the first thing which comes to mind is that you can stream from random locations where you don't have control over the infrastructure. You cannot rely on like that somebody gonna throw you a pipe, which you can actually pipe your streams through. But this is going to give you this assurance that wherever you go, you actually have something to rely on.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And we've been in that situation a ton. You go to a venue, they hand you a network cable, here's the internet, or connect to the Wi-Fi, it's fine. And then all of a sudden, 500 people show up, and they're all on the guest Wi-Fi, and it's all connected to a 100 megabit pipe, and now you lost your stream, right? So we've always used some form of bonding, cellular bonding, but this kind of takes it to another level with the 3, so it's got the 3 modems built in, right? So it's 3 SIM cards. Mm-hmm. You can get the data through you all. That's what I recommend, because you were telling me a little bit about prioritization. If you just go and get consumer SIM cards, you're going to be on a lower priority on the towers. Right. Versus the enterprise level that you've negotiated, right? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly right. So like kind of give it half step back, is that how it's different from solutions you may have chosen before, is that we're not just a piece of hardware you just throw and then we give it to you and you go figure out how do you actually work with it, which is not our approach. Our approach is give you complete end-to-end solution. So we simplify it to the bonds where you literally only thing you need to do is screw on antennas, turn it on, takes about 30 seconds, and you're done. You get your internet, everything else is taken care of, including the data plans as you just talked about, and including all the cloud configuration, all the management about it. We're very proud of our approach to the support team, is that we have very low response times, very quick resolution times. So we always respond right away, always doing our best effort to resolve your issues as soon as you reach out. So because if you're in the middle of an event or right before an event, if you send a ticket to support and you don't have to wait until it's going to be resolved, it's like it's either going to work or you probably going to lose this project, lose this customer if it's not.
I tested that, by the way, at 10:30 on a Friday night. I'm like, I don't believe them. There's nobody on the other end of this, and there was. We had a nice conversation.
Excellent. Yeah, that's the core value there. Is that people typically underestimate how valuable it is. But first time people reach out to support and actually interact with it, it becomes a complete no-brainer. For the price you're asking, you're actually getting full-time IT person who is always on the lookout for your network to be best performance it possibly can be.
Sure.
And that's again, that's kind of end-to-end piece of it that, as we talked about a little bit of the camera, about our client portal and what you can configure there, and that's all important. We have those tools. But as I told you, that more than half of our customers never log in there because everything is taken care of. You really you just get your bill for data once a month and everything else is taken care of.
Sure.
So that's what we pride on it. Kind of double clicking a little bit on the SIM conversation is that you were right. There's a lot of hidden policies which are completely non-obvious for any outsider, like how it all works. There's priority networks, and when there is also kind of the way the traffic is routed, you can go direct, you can go through multiple intermediary nodes. And to figure it out, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of conversations. And I spent personally probably hundreds of hours talking to all different telecom providers and sub-providers to find the best possible solutions in there. So the SIMs we supply, I can swear by that it's going to be always ahead of the network, always going to be top of the queue. It's not going to be immune from the interference. Like if you're going to be at a stadium and there's 50,000 people there is not only limits on the tower. On the tower, you're going to be first, but there is also limits on the physical layer, on the waves itself. And if it's too much interference going on, you're going to have some issues. So there is no immunity against that.
Sure.
But as far as the capacity of the pipe, you're going to be first. You know, you're never going to be throttled, never going to be capped. So we guarantee that your most important data always going to go through, and we will settle it with you after the fact. So that's a very, very important piece of the entire service.
Yeah, no, it is important because TVJ, who's another YouTuber and friend of mine, works in television and always, says they use I think DeGero or LiveView or one of those, and they work great when there's not a lot of people around, but then you start adding more people on the tower, and if you're deprioritized, you're going to be on the last rung, and you may not get data or speeds, or you may get packet loss, so I guess maybe that's a good tie into what is bonding, because if you're an IT person out there, you might know failover. Like you might have a router that can do failover, so you have your primary WAN and your secondary WAN. That's one way to have redundancy, but it's like a active passive, right? It's more of a waiting for something to happen, and maybe there's a delay. And then there's other people who will use multiple networks at once, and they'll have kind of sticky sessions, right? Like, so a session you'll be on one website and you'll have a session connected to one ISP and you'll be connected to another ISP, but that's not really bonding, right? So people think, well, I have multiple WANs on this router. That's not really bonding. So maybe could you talk a little bit about what you're doing with maybe you could have basically up to 5 connections?
On this unit, yes.
Okay.
On the software piece, there are really no limits. You can get, if 5 is the most we tried, I think, but 8, 12, it shouldn't be a problem if whichever comes down to it.
So all the connections come into this box.
Yep.
And then what is the box actually doing?
So we operate on the data layer, meaning that we get packets from you for whatever you send in, whether it's, again, your phone, your laptop, your camera, your encoders, doesn't really matter. It comes to us. We get this data packet. We slice it on multiple pieces. Those individual pieces get re-encrypted. So there's extra layer of security, and those individual smaller pieces then go being sent across different channels in parallel. And the attempt is to fill those channels to the best of their capacity. So if it's absolutely equal channels, it's kind of easy, just split it equally. When it's one channel gives you 5 megabits, another one gives you 10, and the third one gives you 20, all of a sudden its distribution is not as trivial. But ultimately the idea is it goes through all of those channels in parallel, and then it lands on our VPN server on the backend, and this VPN server receives all those chunks. It re-encrypts our encryption. It doesn't anything to do with your end-to-end encryption, so your stuff is still going to be encrypted by you. But so we re-encrypt those pieces, we reassemble it into the original packet, and then we send you a destination. So from your perspective as a customer, as a user of this technology, you don't see anything happening. It's just basically a regular internet, but under the hood, we use multiple channels at the same time. So again, which increases throughput most of the time. Again, there is some edge cases when it's going to be detrimental, but overall it's
Sure, nothing's perfect.
Typically going to have much better performance on the bandwidth side, but more importantly, when this happens, you have like, again, all channels working simultaneously, delivering the same data, meaning you have a stability of performance. So like, let's say, which is again, world of cellular is notorious to be unstable, and that's what you were describing about that people show up and now there's like, what used to be like 50 megabits, now it's like 1.5. What you do about that? What we do about that is like chunk of a packet being sent over the underperforming channel, and we can see dynamically how much this channel can push through, and like lower and lower and lower data push through this channel, so can adjust to its speeds. And while if packet not going to get delivered, lost packet, it's going to be immediately retried through a different channel, which we know is a better channel at a given moment. So as a result, you have very little penalty on latency, and we ultimately guaranteeing the packet delivery. So you have the end-to-end picture because it still like remains TCP session at the end of the day. We have options to do like TCP, UDP, and people typically conditioned to believe that UDP is better for SRT because it is true. UDP has less overhead on the session, and SRT is very good at adapting and like do the restoration of packets. Like SRT is like very powerful codec. But what we found out in our case, that actually using this multi-pass TCP approach we use is actually typically has better performance than over UDP tunnels. Well, again, we have an option. You can do it yourself. You can ask us to switch it to UDP. But what we saw in practice in this space is that streams are better delivered over TCP, which is interesting. Like people sometimes would ask about latency. I think it's kind of sensitive topic. And with us, with all the cellular, with all the bonding in place, typically we see under 100 milliseconds latency on the delivery. So again, there's still going to be latency on your side. How far it is going to go from our server to your server, from your server to like push to CDN and everything else. So that overall latency might be higher, but our link typically it's under 100 milliseconds in total latency.
Sure. Well, and there would be latency on any ISP
regardless,
without the router, right? Like
for sure. Like I mean, yes. Like if you're going to use fiber, you're going to have very good latency.
Right.
That's and I'm not competing with fiber on latency. Also, I'm trying to deliver you with as reliable connectivity as possible. Where like from a reliability perspective, we're comparable with fiber. From the performance, from the bandwidth and latency side, obviously fiber is better. But if you're going to use pure cellular, it's at least 50 milliseconds right there.
Sure.
Just going to be just on the tower link. So that's, so we don't add much extra. It's very optimized for that. It's pretty straightforward.
Sure. Yeah, and it depends on your use case, especially for broadcast. I mean, sometimes latency isn't that much of a challenge. Sometimes it is, right? If you're having real-time conversations.
And to be clear, if you're digging into latencies, that we have tricks how to optimize it even further. We have ways to collocate your servers with ours, so you don't have extra links there. We have a few other things we can do about it. So there are things we can assist you, but typically what we have is actually working just great, and nobody wants to spend extra time configuring anything more complicated. It just works.
Yeah. That makes sense. So I guess just to roll back of like, all right, the data. So you're actually establishing a VPN of your own. So it doesn't matter if I'm already encrypting packets. That's irrelevant. You're actually on top of that. You're establishing a connection between this box and this aggregation server.
I wouldn't say it's irrelevant because it's still going to have link from our servers to your server. So there's still going to be a portion of the internet of public internet. So encryption is still good practice. So I wouldn't discourage you to have end-to-end encryption, but from our perspective, it doesn't matter. Encrypted, not encrypted, we're going to disassemble it, re-encrypt it, an extra layer, and then we're going to send it over and it's going to come to our servers, which has a lot of additional side benefits like persistent session, for example, or static IPs. Right now, actually, for some reason lately, I've been hearing a lot of requests about static IPs from people, and they're trying to figure out how you do static IPs on cellulars. And with us, don't even bother. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Cellular and non-cellular, you want to have your ISP plugged in, and you want to fail over with static IP. It doesn't matter. Everything going to go through static VPN server. Static IP is by default assumed.
Sure.
So wherever you plug it in, you're going to have same IP wherever you go. And as a result, you can configure your remote flows, remote control solutions, or whatever else you may need to.
Yeah, there's a concept called CGNet, carrier grade net, right? Where because there's limited IPv4 space, a lot of these carriers and ISPs don't want to give you a true internet routable IPv4 address. So they give you what's in like the 100 scope IP, and that's within basically their private network, and it's called CGNet, but that's not publicly routable on the internet, which means if you're trying to do a port forward, for example, to your encoder or decoder for your SRT or for whatever on the inside of your network, you can't do that alone. Like if you just have a random like cellular hotspot, you're not going to be able to do that if they're using CGNet. So then you have to figure out some other way.
Typically it means you need to pay extra to the carrier.
Yeah, get a static IP if they'll give it to you.
If they will let you.
T-Mobile home internet, they won't give it to you. They're strictly CGNet. In fact, you can't even turn on bridge mode on. So it depends on the carrier, and it can just be a headache. So basically, you're actually taking each packet, you're splitting it up, you're monitoring the different connections to see, okay, are you reliable or not? How much bandwidth can I get out of you or not? You're sending the packets, they're arriving, they're being basically encrypted over that connection, and then you're putting them back together. I think of Willy Wonka when the chocolate bar turns into a million little pieces and then puts it back together. So you're putting it back together at a server, which is in the cloud, right?
Yep.
And then from that server is where it's going on to the end destination. If you're going to YouTube or you're going to Vimeo or some other.
Exactly.
So it's coming out of that server that's in the cloud.
Yep.
Gotcha. Can you talk maybe a little bit more of how does that server work, or like where does it live?
Well, so it's by default it's in our public cloud. We mostly use AWS. We don't have to be AWS. If you have any other preferences, it's easy for us to move around. It's kind of very simple Linux-based server which we can deploy pretty much anywhere. That's why I was saying that you can quad deploy with yours if you need to. But yeah, it's basically a public AWS instance which plays a role of VPN, and effectively it's like a VPN which also does bonding. And there is not much to it if it's besides the security and convenience.
Right. Yeah. Full disclosure, I used to work for AWS, so I'm familiar with how the AWS thing works, and so the actual EC2 instance has a static IP, or what AWS calls an elastic IP.
Yep.
Right. So you're able to hit that from the internet if you were to do a port forward, and this does support port forward.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. You set that up in the client portal, or you have someone from support set that up.
Exactly. So that's kind of what we touched on. That the easiest way, just write to us and say which ports on which device you want to be forwarded to, and we're going to do it like in a few seconds. Or there is a interface in the client portal which you can leverage and do it yourself.
I think it was maybe Todd or you were telling me a story of you do some proactive. So if I had this thing and the SIM card was popped out, that you have another way of monitoring these things.
Well, so when the SIM card pops out, that's the worst case scenario for us, because it's the only way we can fix it. We can tell you put it back in, which is actually, there was actually like one story about it happened. Like it was at NAB, New York. We had one new customer, which our guys noticed the SIM popped out, and I just walked to their booth. I didn't know him, and I just popped it back in. It's like, that's how proactive support works.
It's physical proactive support.
Yeah, that was funny. But awesome. Like kind of coming back to the idea is that we monitor the situation. We see what's going on. We see there's some underperformance. Like most typical issue, what we can resolve without you ever noticing is that like one of the modems underperforming just completely offline. And there are plenty of different reasons why it might be. It might be on the modem side, it might be on the tower side. There's a lot of different things which can go wrong. And what we can do, we can log in, we can reboot this individual modem without touching anything else. And from your perspective, your network is stable because you have other two still pumping. But we're going to reset it, and it's going to reconstruct, and it's going to get back into the pipe. And again, you don't even notice, but we made your network just quite a bit better by addressing this.
I didn't realize you guys could do each individual modem.
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff like that, and and that's why one of the reasons why, like, if you go to big events and you see something is off and it just doesn't give you enough bandwidth, which again happens, we're not immune from it. Like the way I like to pitch it, I cannot give you guarantees SLA because it's just like different threats coming to mind, but I'm not in control of the networks, so I cannot give you guaranteed performance, but what I can give you is what we call the best chances of success, meaning that out of the worst situation, we're going to give you as much as possible, but you're going to find those places where nothing can be done. It's like, again, if you're in a desert, in a bunker, probably there is not much you can help you with,
right.
no matter how much you write to support, if you even can't write to support. When you go into the busy environment, often there is something we can do to adjust the network. Often we can kind of like change the bands manually. It's like there is automation on all the modems, and they try to choose best, and towers try to delegate the right bands. But sometimes you have to force them to jump on another one to get better performance, because automation fails on all fronts. So we can log in and we can do it. Another piece, what we can do, we'll be able to do soon. We're signing up new SIM supplier for us, which will be able to switch between the networks dynamically. So if you have like Verizon, T-Mobile, is like our always approach is that connect to all three, because typically if you duplicate in the same network, it gives you some performance gain, but not much. And especially with fluctuating environments, you want to connect to all three at all times. That's kind of what people undermining a lot, and like people who know about bonding often run on two connections, and they're missing out a lot because of it. It creates your life is much harder if you just rely on two instead of rely on three. So we always rely on three different, but there are always going to be this long tail of edge cases where one of them is completely useless, but one of them is pretty good. So like, why wouldn't you switch completely useless one and something which is decent and get this like 20% gain? So we'll be able to do it probably in a couple of weeks for everybody. It's part of the service. And that's kind of like one of the examples of if you go into the extreme environment and out of the box, what you have doesn't work, we will help you out. Either we can change the configuration a little bit to make it better, or we will just tell you outright that the noise ratio and the where you are, the signal strength is completely uninhabitable.
Can you move to the other side of the room?
Can you move around?
Right.
Like, can you do like some simple adjustments to address it? Because often enough, which is like within the cellular space in general, is that I've seen plenty of examples when moving unit like 6 feet can give you 20 megabits of difference of performance. It's just like very, very simple things. So we will help you think about those and like give you some ideas what you can do. So like, again, we always with you, and our goal is to make sure that your connection is successful as possible, so you can do what you need to be doing.
Interesting. So the new SIM you're talking about, like if, for example, I go into a location, Verizon's rock solid, but T-Mobile's like non-existent.
Yeah.
Instead of having one of my modems just basically do nothing, I can make that modem also on Verizon and now have a secondary Verizon, like two Verizon connections.
That's the idea. I don't want to oversell it, it's not live, and always between me promising things and it's actually becoming live, there are probably going to be more gaps than I am advertising. But yes,
but the concept,
that's the idea,
okay.
which we should be able to do with our new partner, which we pretty close to kind of roll out with.
Gotcha. But you can use your own SIMs. I guess that's key.
That's important thing to note is that so while our goal is to make it as headache-free as possible, we spend a lot of time on optimizing everything to make sure that what you're using it for is going to be best performing. And on the data front, we practically don't make, if any, money at all on data, because our goal is to give you the best rates and the best performance. That's what you pay for the service for. That said, because we don't make money on data, it means we're completely free to accept whatever you have. So if you want to bring your own SIMs, you have your own plans, go ahead. There's always a disclaimer that, again, as you said at the beginning, that it may be consumer SIMs. You may be throttled in some cases, you may be capped at some places. So we cannot guarantee performance on those, but you're absolutely welcome to use those. And typically, from the use cases perspective, if you would be broadcasting or doing any other mission critical stuff from busy environments, I will always advise you against their own SIMs, because again, it's hard to guarantee that it's going to work well. But if you have some sort of stationary solution, let's say you have some sort of automated streaming on a college stadium and there's nobody there, just like always online, sort of deal. So you're going to use a lot of data, but the tower is never going to be overloaded, so the access to the tower is not that big of a deal. For those cases, high cap SIMs would be much more economically efficient. It's going to be basically much cheaper. And we have the partners who we can connect you with, so you can get those plans also managed by them. So there is no, again, making it as simple as possible for you to sign up for those, or you maybe already have your own plans through your organization. But that's how you can save money on those very high data usage use cases.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work for a like Fortune 100 company, and they had some giant enterprise agreement, nationally with Verizon. It was like 100,000 phones or something.
Yeah.
Or like so there are companies who was just say like we have to use our
Exactly.
things, and in that case, hopefully you're prioritized
Yeah.
at the enterprise level, but. So that's cool though, because you're not baked in. It's not like it's you could just pop the SIM out. It's not like it's baked in there and you can't take the thing apart and you void the warranty. And
it's like we're very free about it. There is like one caveat is that some SIMs you have to put different APNs on, and some SIMs don't work as well on some protocols. So we have to add some wrappers on it. So there's like some configuration, which basically if you do switch SIMs, it's a good idea to write to us to check if it works as it should. Again, it's going to take us a few seconds to diagnose, and we can tell you for sure, is it work as it should, or is it something is not right? But yeah, we're going to work with you. We're going to enable you whatever you need.
You should sell cell phones, because I've had so many problems with SIMs over the years and switching through unlocks. So
it's on the roadmap.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, bonded cell phones. I think you heard it here. Okay, so I guess just let's go back to the monitoring. So one of the big benefits of Mr. Net, just in comparative, like as in the research we've done to get to this point to like use this in our live streaming and be a reseller of it, is the fact that you have this support. Like to me, that's a big competitive advantage for your company. So, but how are you getting into this thing? So, because there's the other element of security, right? Like,
yeah.
So, like, what are you seeing on this box?
So, yeah, to be clear, we don't store any transmitted data at all. In fact, even from the log perspective, we store absolute minimum, basically nothing. And that's the downside of it, is that if you had problems, but you didn't tell us about it, and you come us in a couple of days and say, I had a problem on this event on a Friday 3 days ago for a couple hours, what happened there? We typically cannot give you a definitive answer. Because again, we don't store any of your data, and like, I don't know what was wrong. Was it like carrier issue? Was it something with your configuration? A lot of things could go wrong. But from our side, so we don't store anything. We don't sniff anything. We have firewalls in place. So there is no inbound connection allowed unless you do the port forwarding. So there is like, you're isolated through this built-in VPN security. And like the AWS security best practices. So you kind of get all of this packet effectively for free as part of all the solution. So it's like very high advanced. It's a way, so we have remote access to the unit, but the way we have it is like multiple steps of the encryption keys in between and access keys and like SSH connections. Like there's like 3 of them for us to get to the point. So like you will have to get compromised a lot to be able to somebody to access to your network. So again, it's highly secure by all standards. We have the compliance with many security certifications. And again, I don't see it happening, but let's say like our key guys, their keys got exposed, and then our keys on the servers got exposed somehow, like got sniffed out. Let's play the devil's advocate. The worst case scenario, which again is, I don't think is really possible, but this is where security goes. You always have to think about the things. So the worst case scenario is going to get to our base bastion, from bastion to the VPN server, from VPN server. They might be able to go to the unit, but then on the unit, so they will be able to see what's connected to it, basically. But even there, like, you will have to do quite a bit of work to be able to make sense out of it. And that's kind of back to what we talked about, the end-to-end encryption. In this case, we will still not be able to see much. We'll just see the patterns of data, but not real data. And then, unless you will be able to sniff your keys as well, that's like basically it's complete science fiction territory now. But
right, anything's hackable. It's just how much work do you want to put in, right? I mean, most of like, and the IT guys who watch this Most of the time, it's not the firewall that gets hacked. It's
Exactly.
somebody clicking on an email, and now they're inside the network.
Exactly.
It's the lowest hanging fruit, right? And it sounds like
Exactly.
there's not a lot of low hanging fruit here.
Exactly. So like as far as like our people practices, there is a lot of gateways on the way to be able to make sure that's like it's not enough to compromise a single person to be able to access it. There's like a lot of things need to happen before that, and you're right. It's like the investment going to be obnoxiously high, and
Right.
again, not to say it's impossible. As you said, everything is hackable, but we do take it very, very seriously. And it's definitely miles ahead on security front with any direct ISP. Like if you find specialized hardware, security hardware firewalls, I would say it's a good thing to have if you're worried about it. But we are the second best thing after that. And we just give it to you by default.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think part of like having your public IP be on a server that's on AWS, and like you said, you get some benefits of things like automatic, like there's some basic level DDoS protection. There's some basic level of things that's exposed where this exact box doesn't have a public IP. It's going through the VPN then, right? So, but it's creating for the actual packets, like the data, it's going to that aggregation server. Is it also creating a VPN connection to the server that would be for monitoring and like keeping track of the device?
So the way it works, when you boot it up, it goes to our production server, the main like orchestration server, which kind of assigns, pairs up devices with cloud pieces. But it's basically just sensing, I'm here, I am online, and like which kind of server do I need to connect to? Have I been moved to another server? Is it the same server I had last time is good? And that's the only time that you actually interact with it. And then everything else you interact with your AWS instance, which then reports some metrics back to us, like the network quality, like data usage, stuff like that. But it's basically the unit itself doesn't go to back to the server much. It has to in order to like maintain persistence. Let's say like AWS region died,
right?
And then it needs to reconnect somewhere else. So it has to go back to our server. So that's why it has to keep a link with it. But it's not a bidirectional link. It's just basically just pushes some data up. But there is like there is no central hackable way. So in our example, they can hack one instance, but we have hundreds of those, thousands of those, and you will have to do it individually for every one of them.
Right.
Like there is no central point of attack to like undermine entire network.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So if I'm in California versus like we're in Connecticut right now, I assume that I would be provisioned on a West Coast server versus an East Coast server. So
that's kind of one of what we offer to our customers in the broadcast space in particular, is that you can have, like by default, we're gonna assign the closest one to the shipping address. So you're gonna be like, if you're typically in California, we're gonna give you California server. But if you happen to travel, like you decide to have an event in Miami, and then what you do, you write to us, and we're gonna reallocate you to like Virginia server, so it's like very nearby.
Nice.
So you can, again, optimize for latency if you needed to.
Sure, right, because you can't beat the speed of light. I mean, physics is...
There are some limits.
There's some limits in this world.
So far.
So, right.
As far as we know.
Right. I think you traveled here through a wormhole. We were talking a little bit before. I don't know. You just appeared in my studio. Where is the company actually based?
All over the place. I mean, we are a proper 2023 company with a lot of distributed workforce. So we are Delaware C Corp. So we're US-based, all IPs, US, everything. Like we have the team in US. The support is US onshore. So it's all guys are here in New York right now. And so that's kind of all the corporations around here. As far as developers go, and they're all across the world, there's like Asia, Europe, they're like all spread all around. So we have kind of, again, the core team is here. The extended team is everywhere.
Awesome. One key difference for us, I may have mentioned a little bit before, is we're getting more into use cases of, for example, using PTZ cameras in the field, but not necessarily having the PTZ operator right there. So how do you do that? Well, you need to be able to have more than just, and it may not just be that. Maybe they need to control something else that's on site at an event, at a location. The traditional cellular bonding for video is sending video and sending video across, but if you needed an actual like router and be able to get to things on the other side of the network, so that's where this comes in. So this thing will actually issue IP addresses to your local devices, right?
So you kind of two main differentiator on this front is that it is not just video, and by extension of it, we don't lock you to any ecosystems. So you're free to bring whatever you happen to work with, any encoders or other equipment. It doesn't matter to us. We just give you pure IP pipe, and you do whatever the hell you want with it. So from a video encoding perspective, it means all encoders are available to you, and all of them now can be portable, and not only just the ones which support bonding built in. And on the extension, as you were saying, that you can now not only use it for video, you can use it for all the other operations bidirectionally. Like people use it just for internal operations and like in a TV track, because you just need to run your laptops and do like again, the backfeeds and all of that stuff. And
emergency services, right? You guys do?
Yeah, we do. So it's like so you're gonna have access to that. Or in your PTZ example, like so you're gonna have a dedicated gateway wherever your equipment travels. So now you have remote access to it.
I don't know about you, but just getting like good support and good customer service is just like hard these days.
And some of it for good reason. It's like it's hard to provide it as well. It's like it takes effort, it takes investments to make it happen.
People,
training,
right?
Yeah, it's you need to find the people, you need to pay the good money to the right people. Otherwise, it's complicated, but it is doable.
Yeah.
And we recognize that it is highly important in what we do again, because we seek to provide you this end-to-end headache-free solution. We want to take away from your plate, not to add another piece to worry about.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, the testing we've done, it's been rock solid. I guess so. Like future plan, like what's kind of, is there anything roadmap wise that's interesting that you can talk about?
I mean, we always iterating on the performance side, on the software piece. Like just over this year, I think with firmware adjustments and with this new SIM supplier I'm talking about, I would say we gained about 20% on performance. Just the way how again we continue like drilling down and optimizing the routing and networking and how the package slicing goes. So that work never stops. Then like some simple feature sets, again, it's going to heavily depend on the customer use cases. Some is relevant, like alerts. For some, it's completely irrelevant, so it's hard to really say. On the hardware front, we also iterating. Probably you will see some new hardware next year. Cannot tell you much about it. So there's definitely like in technology space, I've been like born and bred in technology space myself, so I know that innovation, iteration is important, and it's not, what I can tell you, it's not going to be stale. It's going to be significantly new product every year, at very least under the hood. But again, the end user experience always going to be what we're going to always strive for, is that headache-free connectivity. Meaning that you're going to get your access to the internet wherever you need it, and we're going to take care of all the mess around it.
So that's awesome that you're innovating and that there's new boxes coming out, but I'll play devil's advocate because I've seen lots of companies put out shiny things, people buy them, and then they stop supporting it because the next new shiny box came out. So as far as like a length of support, like if I bought this one, but then next year you come out with 5G, it's 10 times fast, whatever. You know, it's just the evolution of technology. Like, do you plan to? I assume you plan to continue to support it for a certain period of time.
So for sure, we're going to continue support hardware we release to the public, and kind of our play, as we talked about it a little bit before this conversation as well, is that our core value is a software piece, everything like how it works from firmware to the server to everything around it. This is the core piece we're going to innovate on, and this is going to be more or less consistent across all hardware lines we release. And we actually don't want to over-focus on hardware. We want, like, if you're going to release stuff, it's going to be like very limited, specifically significantly different enough, so it actually warrants separate SKU and separate use cases. We just don't want to play this game like when every year you release like 10% better and basically the same thing, just you can just do the fine print, which is slightly different.
Sounds like a certain phone I know.
Exactly. I'm not very interested in playing this game.
Right.
Because my core revenue and my core service, my core IP, my core value I'm bringing to the ecosystem is like software and services I provide. So yeah, from that perspective, meaning that we're going to continue supporting this one, and the service fee you pay to us, the license you buy, in the worst case scenario, and the new hardware comes up, it's going to be transferable to the new hardware, and we don't charge too much for the hardware in the first place for you to be too concerned about it. But yeah, we don't have plans to discontinue anytime soon. It's already working, it's already part of the ecosystem, and for us, it doesn't make sense to discontinue it right away.
Sure. Yeah, I asked that question because I've been burned by it a few times.
It makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, even just Teradek. So we use the Video Go as an encoder we had been using for the last couple of years, or one of, and they had two different bonding services. They had ShareLink and I think it was ShareLink and Core, and they just randomly sent me an email one day and they were like, 2 weeks from now, ShareLink is going away. And I'm like, what? Like, you have to use Core now? And then they sent me an email like 2 weeks after that. How do you like Core? I'm like, I'm not using you anymore. Like really? You gave me 2 weeks. So yeah, it's especially like I think us via live stream broadcast, like, we get into a groove with something, we know it works. Like, this we want to make sure that you're not going to email us one day and be like, so it doesn't work anymore.
Well, that's kind of like where keeping focused on the core value prop is very important. Like in your example is that there is a lot of companies who are doing like hundreds of different things. And for them, like juggling this, like what's most profitable branch of the business, that makes sense. And then like some of them are just going to fall through and it's like not as meaningful to keep around anymore. In our case, our whole business is around one thing, is providing connectivity. So there's like going to be one product which can do well, and this is our value. And we know there's so many applications to it that we don't need to branch out. We don't need to start doing new shiny things. We're going to get different versions of iterations of what we have for sure. And again, we need to improve, we need to evolve, we need to kind of adjust with the times and demand. But overall, the core focus not going to shift around. We're not going to start doing encoders ourselves. We're not going to do, I don't know, something completely different, because again, it's not what we are about. We have sole purpose is to solve your connectivity needs, and that's what we focus on. And whatever iterations of the product we have, that's what you're going to get. And we will make sure that it works for our customers, because again, if our goal is to make it headache-free, it doesn't make sense for me to email you in a year saying, okay, scrap everything you got, do new stuff. Overall, if you can follow my business incentive, why you see how I'm aligned with you, is that by focusing just on the connectivity piece, instead of trying to get as much revenue as possible from a single vertical, as some other companies do. In my case, I'm approaching all of the verticals, and it's diversified from the business perspective, but what it comes back to as you as a customer, so I don't have to charge you an outrageous amount of money because I can get some of it with volumes instead of with higher margins. And also, again, it means from your specific concern, now you have a security of the product security perspective, because I may want to replace your unit because you have one and you're not that big of a customer to me, but there is other customers who are using similar or the same hardware who has thousands of them, and I'm not going to tell them, please shut it off, because they're going to be very upset with me and it's going to jeopardize my business. So by doing this, you're kind of being protected by somebody else being part of the ecosystem. Sure. So it's kind of like mutually benefiting without knowing each other sort of deal.
Well, we don't have to deal with, the planned obsolescence of that some companies maybe do because they want you to buy the next shiny box. Exactly. Because you're not really, like, this box really just enables your software and your bonding business, so it's
right? Ultimately, our vehicle to deliver our services. We don't really try to give you the most advanced hardware and like make money on it as much.
Right. It has to work well.
Exactly.
That's why you built your own.
Exactly.
It's just, that's not your core
value. Exactly.
Core value. Yeah. No, that's cool. I have heard now from several people that, you're a relatively newer company, right, to the field. A couple of years you've been doing this stuff. You've kind of been in the space for a long time, but NAB, people have said that these red boxes are randomly popping up at all kinds of booths because people need connectivity. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
I mean, right. It's just like one of the use cases people realize it is a no-brainer use case, like trade show connectivity. Typically, when you charge way too much money for way too little service as far as it goes to internet access, and people recognized that if you get this unit into your trade show booth, it's going to pay for itself in one day of your trade show, but you're going to keep it for a year or more. So it just becomes a complete no-brainer. So people started deploying it everywhere, and they've been very happy with it because it works, and typically works much better than alternatives. So that we get traction more and more on that front. And that's one of the ways, again, to keep it my goal within this market is that I give people an idea that's complete no-brainer. This unit gonna pay for itself the first time you use it, and the opportunities to use it are endless. It's like it's gonna be your events you're gonna do. It's gonna be the trade shows. Maybe it's gonna be you traveling for work and realizing that your hotel internet sucks and you cannot do like something important while you're at hotel. So it's like there's so many ways it can be useful, and use it once, it paid for itself. And so like, so why not? Why not have one?
Right.
That's my goal is make it a no-brainer, get it as many hands as possible, because as many people, the more people have it, the better service I can provide, because now I have the ecosystem, now I have the network effects, now I can actually negotiate better deals on data, now I can negotiate better deals on hardware. A lot of things start falling together if the more people have it. So I'm incentivized for you to use it everywhere. So that's why I'm incentivized to give you the best possible deal to make it as easy for you to switch over.
Sure. Well, and ease of use, I think, is is one thing you all have promoted, and I've experienced it. But you told me a story about, was it your mother-in-law?
Yes.
Are you comfortable telling that here?
We'll see how it comes out. But so they people of age living in the mountains area, not particularly technical. It's like Lake Tahoe mountains area. So the internet is horrendous. There were no options, and they've been living there for 10, 15 years. And they tried a lot of different things. Some of them barely worked, others didn't work at all. And they're like looking what they can do. And I think 2 years ago, there was a local company, local ISP, who kind of upsold them a multi-year contract and saying like, we're going to do it for you. And they sent a couple of technicians on top of the mountain to their cabin. And those 2 technicians spent a few hours at the cabin. They like packed up, left, said, nothing we can do here, and just packed up and left. And so they remained like, there is no internet there. And then I sent them my unit, and those couple, again,
not too tech savvy,
took them about 5-10 minutes to set it up, and they had good internet ever since. It's like 50 down, 40 up or something, and just like on top of the mountain with nothing else worked ever.
Wow.
So again, today, maybe something like Starlink could suit them better because it's like more tailored to the consumer use, and we objectively not the best suited for the like households. Again, data is more expensive, and just overall technology is a little bit overkill at this stage at least. But the point being is that everybody can use it. It's very easy to set up, and we take care of all the heavy lifting, and ease of use is highest priority in our case.
Sure. So I guess if someone were to buy one of these, they order it. So we're a reseller. So I'll plug, we have our own website up, buymrnet.com. Your regular website is mrnet.us?
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to learn more, you can really go to either of those. But anyway, you buy one of these units, you get it. Basically, you just put the antennas on, plug it into power. The SIM cards are already in. It comes up, and it's already working.
So the one last piece is like you probably need to put your equipment into this LAN port.
Right.
Or we have a dongle for Wi-Fi. To put it on front or on the back, it doesn't matter. But yes, that's the only thing you need to do. Just screw it on, turn it on, and it's done. There's
no activations or cell activations.
So on cell activation, it depends the route you're gonna purchase it from.
If we did it, if somebody did it through the modems that are in there with the SIM cards that are in there.
So what we typically ask, if you buy it through our reseller channels, and we charge $1 for activation just for it to get the service active, just for data again, for us to know where to send the data bills.
Right. Because authorize the card basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Because if our partner sold it and we are responsible to bill the customer for data, it's gonna be a hiccup. So yes, there's $1 activation fee exists. Yes.
Right. Make sure the credit card's real. So if you use a terabyte of data, you're still on the hook to pay for that to the carriers, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, but more or less, if we were deploying these to multiple sites, and maybe you don't have a super technical person at that site, they should be able to just turn it on and use it. Like, I don't have to have them all come to my site and provision them. And
No.
I just send them out.
And especially like exact data activation, is basically like one-time flow. So if you're going to buy first one, we need to activate. If you're going to buy 10 more, it's going to be same stuff. Yeah,
same card,
same card, same everything. So you don't need to do anything else, just for the first-time customers. And like another piece there that we need to get your email. So we get you hook up with our customer portal. So you have all of this, and again, access to the support. So like you need to interact with us a little bit to make it work. But technical side of things, yeah, like this unit no need to unpack it, just send directly where you need it and just unpack it there and it's going to work.
Any particular customer story that sticks out to you where they were using one, maybe a competitor and
well, without naming any names, but so we had like one of the bigger war story was at Kentucky Derby, where obviously it's giant event, hundreds of thousands of people on the stadium. Obviously cellular coverage is very challenging. And our partners brought us there and put us in the middle of the racetrack. Again, not the best place to be if you want to have cell coverage. And they brought other brands there as like similar solutions. And everything was more or less running up to the race. As soon as the race started, pretty much everything shut down. You couldn't send a text message over your phone.
Oh, wow.
Everything was completely dead. And lo and behold, all the competition solutions were also dead, completely unusable, just bricks. And the only thing which was still piping data was us. Admittedly, the tiny Mr. Net box didn't have too much speed in it. Like we were maybe like doing like 4 megabits or something, but we were still piping data. And like everything else was completely just no access whatsoever. So again, that's kind of, and this was a perfect example. We're not magicians. If there is nothing to gain, it's like physical layer is completely non-existent for you in this situation. Nothing we can do, but we're going to give you the best chances for success. And that's kind of like one of those examples.
Sure. Well, that's a great example. Kentucky Derby, that's pretty cool. Like to see some pictures of the Mr. Net box sitting at the Kentucky Derby. That's cool. One other question that popped up to my head while you were saying that is if, let's say I don't have the greatest cellular, but I do have a very good like venue internet connection.
Yeah.
And I plug that in and I am paying for the data on the cellular. Let's say I have a great connection. I'm just using this as more of kind of a backup and a bonding connection, but I have a gig up, gig down fiber connection from XYZ venue, but who knows? It could go down, it could get unplugged. So is there a way I can say prioritize that over the cellular and only use the,
So there is basically 3 modes we have, which you can switch in your customer portal, just by reaching out to us. And by default, all units come in like full bonding mode, meaning whatever you plug in, we're going to use the full capacity, but we're going to use all the channels at all times. So by default, if you haven't switched anything and you plug fiber internet in, this fiber obviously going to be the strongest pipe. So it's going to use provision like most of the data. In our real case scenario, is going to be like 95, 98% of data going to go through this fiber. But cellular is still going to be engaged a little bit because, again, it's full aggregation. It's going to engage all the channels to as much as it can.
Because you don't want to you want to have it like active, right?
Exactly. Not just active, but again, by default, we don't want to make predictions about the channel performance. You may know it's fiber. I don't know it's fiber.
Right.
What if it's going to start fluctuating down the line? So we don't want to, but that's why by default, it's optimized for the best performance. And by default, it's going to bond everything with everything. That said, if you're comfortable to do like more manual switching, then there's 2 other modes involved. One is what we call hard failover, meaning that we're going to use your WAN for as long as it's active. As soon as it dies out, cellular kicks in. The beauty of it, because you're using the VPN, you're still going to have same IP. It means all your application layer still going to have same TCP sessions. But that's where it's going to kind of depend on the application, how they're going to handle like slow and small interruptions in between. Some of them not going to notice any hiccups. Some of them going to like drop for a second or two for the failover to kick in. So basically, there is a risk of a up to 5-second interruption in this mode. In real case, we saw anywhere between nothing, like if you have like a Zoom call, you see nothing happen at all. And again, in the worst case, it's like up to 5 seconds. This is hard failover mode. You use 0 cellular data unless, as long as your WAN active and as WAN dies, all cellular kicks in. And there is a new one, which we introduced recently, which we call soft failover, meaning that we have all the channels running at all times, but cellular is in the tunnel only to be active, but doesn't transmit any data. meaning that it's going to leak a little bit of data. So if you're going to leave it 24/7 running for a month, in a month it's going to adapt to about like 6-7 gigs of what we would call parasitic cellular data. So again, that's probably not as much as you want to pay, but in pure failover is going to be practically zero. So that's the cost of it. But as a benefit of it, it's going to be completely smooth. There are going to be no lost packets whatsoever. So we have complete smoothest failover. So in the broadcast space, that's what I would recommend, because you don't need to run it 24/7. You need to run it for a few hours a week. So you don't have any material penalty on it, but you're going to get the best performance possible out of it.
That makes me excited. I didn't know you had that.
It's a recent addition.
That is very cool. That is very cool, because I mean, it's great if like we've done streams in the middle of a field where it's just cellular.
Yeah.
And of course, you're going to be full bonding, right? But a lot of times you're in a venue and you're like, this looks good. I'm doing a speed test. It looks good. The latency's good.
Yeah.
You know, like I still want to have the backup, and I still don't like my customer doesn't want the stream to drop. So I don't really want to do the hard failover, because there could be, you know, maybe there's a couple seconds or two, and that I don't want that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to pay for all that data if if I have a beautiful, you know, pipe coming from the venue.
Exactly.
So that's awesome. That is, see, that's the benefit of you guys not really being in the data business, is that
I'm not going to force you to use more.
Yeah, like you don't have to. We don't have to use the data. That's pretty cool. I really like the business model. I mean, any questions you have for me?
No.
you're like I gotta get back to New York.
well, I mean, I obviously would be curious about your war stories with it and what you see as a value in it, and like where do you see your most prevalent use case where you would like to see it playing out.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I have this vision in my head of kind of the future of what I want to do with our company of basically being able to have studios in remote locations and not necessarily, because I mean, those of you out there and lugging, like we have a big cargo van and we've got cases and mixers and switchers and cables and like in a perfect world for me, I'm able to send, maybe one technician with a few really good PTZ cameras that have SRT encoders in them, or even if the encoders are out. And then I have an engineer in a studio halfway across the country who can receive those feeds. They look great. They're stable. They can move the cameras around. They can do the zoom. They could add graphics, and then they can send it to wherever it's going. If it's going to an HLS destination, if it's going RTMP to YouTube, or if it's going, wherever it's going. So I bring less gear. It costs me less. The customer's probably happy because now I don't need a half a day to load in. I need an hour. So that's where, for me, the use case of having, I can't necessarily do that with a LiveView or a Dejero, where the concept is I plug in camera, and I send feed. And yeah, it's similar, but what if I have multiple cameras? And what if I need to have the dual channel communication? And what if I need that person who's sitting there to also be on Slack, messaging or whatever, like right. Pre-show, or if I'm a reporter in the field and I need to be able to be watching a return feed of the news broadcast for an hour before I do my 1 minute hit, but there's no other cellular internet. So to me, there's a lot of use cases of having a bonded router versus just a bonded video device. Yeah. So anyway, but thank you for coming. I know it's, it was a trek out here. Anton wanted to be, on our channel, and I appreciate that. When I asked, he was more than willing to take the trip, a couple hours out here. So thank you. And, we're excited to be doing this and be a reseller. If you have questions, like I'm happy to answer, like I mentioned before, I used to work for AWS and I've done a lot of architecture discussions. So, if you have ideas and things you're like, you want to roll off, like I'm happy to do that. I'm sure Anton and the team over there would, I can funnel questions back to you guys as well, or you can reach out to them directly. What's the best way to get in touch with you guys? I mean,
mrnet.us has everything you need to. You can always reach out to like sales@mrnet.us or support@mrnet.us, or just my name at mrnet.us also works. So
they can find you on LinkedIn.
They can definitely find me.
Anton Shmakov. Shmakov?
That's right.
Okay, yeah. We'll get it. I'll get it.
You did it well.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all in the next video. Take care.